In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful and the most advanced. In honor of the original unconditional moment that all conditional moments have arisen from and will return to. In honor of the presence of the system admin and the world host beyond the world room. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today's lecture is an interesting one. I was a bit out of it. I didn't want to give a lecture, but some unique things have been happening, and I'm going to share this before I dive into it. And the lecture tonight is about an unknown being's testimony of the known world. I will be speaking through my presence, which consciously now in a way that maybe before 2014 I was doing it wrong. Treat this lecture as a tree branch, and you're a bird, and feel free to land on this branch or fly away. There is no obligation. For all of us will move forth, will go forth. And there will come a moment where the end will be the three things. One, 2 nights ago, sorry, not at night, 2 days ago, midday, I slept. And I had like a nap that was maybe like 20 minutes to 30 minutes. And I had a dream. I had one of the very unique dream, and I don't have dreams that often. But this was a very unique dream. And I've never experienced something like this in my life. But it was a very simple dream, but it was profound to me, and still the meaning of it, lingers. The ambiguity of it. The dream was I was in this forest. I was underneath this tree. Suddenly, it gets stormy and it's raining, but it's in the day. It's like midday, that kind of light blue, you light of the day. And for the first time in my life, I'm not that close to animals, but an eagle. I saw an eagle descend, and the eagle came so close, and right when it was landing on my shoulder, this is all happening in the dream. I closed my eyes right when it landed on my shoulder, and in the dream, okay, I had this very intense feeling of this eagle being on my right shoulder, okay. Imagine seeing an eagle land on your right shoulder. It was very, very surreal. It was something I can even have like, the emotions I had in that dream right now. It's present. I can feel that eagle on my right shoulder, and that was one. The second unique thing was that today, how I was mentioning that I was a bit out of it, giving the lecture. At midday today, I crossed this sign that it said MW, and then it said the numbers from 10 to 2 p.m. okay, 10 to 2. And the MW were right beside each other. I don't know why my mind saw that. I'm like, yo, that's an Mr. Within right? And for a second, I was like, okay, between 10 to 2 a.m., I just knew in that moment I need to give a lecture, which is there. And the third thing was this thought has been constantly, not constantly, but a couple times popping in my head that when I reach lecture 2600, I should put away the lectures and I should not return to giving lectures until I'm married and I've figured out my own life. These were very unique. Now, you guys don't know me. Some of you may. I don't know how many people will listen to these lectures in the future. I've had visions in the comment section being like next level conversations there. But of course, I do understand that the intention of this project of mine, this Mr.Within project, is beyond life. For the value of human beings, if you look at how human beings are living, we live for the past, for the present, and for the future. But most people, they're occupied by their past. Their identity as a purchased from their past. For another majority, many others, their values are starting from the present. That means how they experience their moment in the present, there is their value. Welcome, guys. Um, my attention is to the chat section. Enjoy the talk. Tonight's talk is, I'm going to explain it after that. Anyways, and there are those who pay attention to the future. Now, I am a firm believer that if you loop in your past for a while, and if you loop even in the present, you will get bored. Okay? And so eventually, as the responsibility level of the species increases for what it truly has access to and for where it truly is present, you will begin seeing human beings become responsible for the future. Now, the access of the human being to the future for now is in our inner minds. That's very key, that the mind is ahead of the body. But the mind is not just the mind, and I've tried to simplify it by explaining that in front of your eyes, you have access to an outer realms that is a public, existential, objective server, and behind your eyes, you have access to a sort of private, it's more than subjective, but private, subjective, uh, uh, non physical server. Behind my eyes, I can envision a Bugatti, but I can't go sit in a Bugatti. I have access to the forms, and what we call abstraction is more of an unconditional awareness to a position. In front of our eyes, reality is very conditioned. Behind our eyes, there's a very unique circumstance for the human experience. That, think of it this way: if your whole life you've been conditioned to think you're a thought, okay, which has been one of the most hilarious deceptions in human history. Okay, that generations and centuries of human beings have been going on. Yo, dude, I'm a thought, man. I'm this thought. That they are identifying with the emergence of content or their awareness to the content of their moment. But as you will listen to this lecture and to these lectures, you will realize that the presence of life is way more unknown than everything we have held and all the ways we have dressed up ourselves in our knowledge. So tonight, give yourself a permission to let the moment be simple and to not be afraid of the unknown. So where do you think we all come from? And yet we are taught to fear the unknown. The body is conditioned. It is a very peculiar situation on Earth, and as consciousness to it increases, we begin to realize if consciousness is defined as a conditional awareness, what is the true mystery behind the awareness? Now, granted, from a certain perspective, it is mysterious. Whenever you hear the word Mysterian or Mysterianism, it means it's a very cool view. It means it's unknown. Doesn't matter how hard you try. Doesn't matter how much knowledge and information you accumulate. Contact, let's say you will find yourself in a moment where what's within your moment can't explain the moment. What does that mean? That means if I have a box full of candy, the candy can't explain the box. What is inside a moment is not the whole moment. This is very important. You realize this, you will be liberated from, let's say, a lot of suffering throughout the day. And why do you think I say an unknown being's testimony? It's usually the other way. It's a known being's testimony. That's how we've been conditioned. But the other side of the coin of awareness to reality matters. I want to tell you guys a story of my own life. And these lectures were born, I think, August 29th, 2004. Excuse me, 2014. But before I started giving these lectures, I was living a very inner life. It started from 2011 and up to 2014. I had found that at the time, the way I was acknowledging it was wrong, but it took me years to understand that I had an ability in something, but the way I was using that ability was wrong. The framework, the context I was activating, that's, let's say, my manifestation in that moment was in the air. And so from 2011 going on to 2014, I was sitting by this fountain. This was, I attended York University for law. And I remember I went to this class and I was so, I hadn't attended classes and I entered that class and it was the day of the exam. And I was like, wow, the only day I decided to go to the class was this exam. Right. And so I was unprepared. I didn't waste time. I left. It was, I had accepted. I go and sit beside this fountain in York. I don't know if it's still there in the University of Canada. And I put my fingertips on one another and I am just being. For the first time in my life, I begin to notice my thoughts, and at the time I used to treat them as thoughts, but I didn't have the concept of neurons that was discovered. I remember sitting there, and every time I would exhale, the speed of thoughts I would have moving in my mind was not normal. And so I began to realize the thoughts in my mind are moving at a speed that is not the normal speed I think. Okay, this is around 2011, not 2000, around there. Okay, guys, I don't remember exactly what I shared this on. And I remember I sit there, there's a sort of time dilation. I feel, I don't know, I felt like I had 30 minutes conversation, like, like a few minutes. Okay. And in my inner realms, I started paying attention and concentrating on the speed of of this thought rhythm, okay, that was way faster than I would think. And I started listening every time I would exhale. And so that thought, those stream of thoughts that was moving fast, it had a conversation. And it told me there's a book in your shelf that you haven't opened. Go and open the page 65, and that's all it said. Okay. So this is back in 2000, again, 11 to 12. I go back home. I go and see this book. So I had a habit of I would go to this bookstore called Chapters, and I would intuitively select books. I would not even open them. You know. But this was one of what when I would come home, I would check them out. But this was one book that I had never opened. It was legit just there in my shelf. Okay. And I go and open that page. It comes to page 65. And exactly what I had in that conversation, it talked about channeling space. The title of that part was channeling space. I got goosebumps. You know, it was a very unique moment. I started reading. Okay. At the time, I read that, but didn't, I don't know how much of it I grasped. I was fascinated by consciousness, spirituality, novels, you know, but it wasn't one that was truly experiential. That was a very unique moment. After that, the content that finds me, I remember suddenly my mind reads this thing that Salvador Dali, the founder of surrealism and art, okay? And pretty much the history of art is it looks like a photograph, and now it's just what's surrealism, okay? Salvador Dali, the father of surrealism, had a method where he would put a spoon on his knee, his pajamas. He would put a metal bucket beside his knee, and he would start drawing in this semi-sleep state. Anytime he would fall asleep too much, he would like bend a little, and the spoon would fall in the bucket, and he would wake up. So he would keep himself in a sort of semi-conscious space. At the same time, I had heard of others. There was somebody, I forget his name. Oh my god, I forget his name. But there was this gentleman, very famous gentleman, who would legit go lie down, okay, and he would just speak, but it wasn't like he was. So at the time, I was introduced to this notion, and it was the New Age community was thriving then. And it was this notion of, yo, people were channeling aliens, people were channeling other beings and whatnot. But for me, that voice early on told me, and there were multiple instances. Another instance was I was making leaves in the backyard of my dad's home at the time. And when I was doing that, suddenly lines of poetry came into my mind. Midday, summer day, I'm like sweating, like, you know, it's like imagine you've done work and whatnot, and suddenly there were tears coming out of my eyes, just tears falling out of my eyes, but my nostrils were not becoming moist automatics. Okay, this is all before 2014. I start every day waking up inspired by Salvador Dali, that book, that channeling space, my own fascination for what is beyond the veil at the time, but that was my guidance. Later on, I understood, but it was something that was meant for me. I would wake up every morning. I had placed two chairs in front of one another. On one chair, I would place my laptop at the time, and on the other chair, right from when I woke up in the morning, not even before brushing my teeth and like getting ready for the day, I would just in that sleepy, like, oh my god, just stretching in my bed. Like right after a few stretches, I would get up and, in some sense, go and sit in front of that chair. Sit in front of that chair I had set up. So I put in these two chairs, my laptop on one of them. I would go sit, press record, and you know, because I was still sleepy, I wasn't putting effort, but my mind and my voice was moving. This started to happen. Okay, to a degree that it started happening when I would write. Okay, now at the time, a unique experience happened around those times where one day I came from the gym and I shared this in other lectures I think earlier. You'll see it here in the 2015 lectures. But one day I come home from the gym. I'm going past the living room and we had a kitchen that is open to the living room. When I went into the kitchen and to the right was the living room, I saw what it was equivalent to a glowing light girl. I don't know how to explain it. It had the form of a young girl, okay, but it was glowing. It was just pure white light, okay. And I remember I saw that in the living room, and then I looked to the left of the kitchen. I turned right, and it was still there, okay. But I was not threatened. I didn't feel threatened. Okay. Afterwards, in this, what I'm trying to tell you is later on that ended up meaning Archangel gibbering. Okay, I had that sign that it was that. I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes the moment knows before you can process. When you're aware of your presence, okay, or when you live through your presence. And so, what I'm trying to tell you is, as a human being on this earth, I started establishing a relationship with realizing that there is unknown limits. But very early on, that was, and every time, every time I would go into the shower, I would call the arch. Long story short, I'm trying to come out with a series of my memories to tell you that I started automatic speech, automatic writing. I recorded, I think I wrote around 10 technical books over 100,000 words, and many books that had started but not finished. This is all before 2000. When 2014 came, I felt that I was working with what I now term as thief marketers. Everything that would happen, I would call Rahul Asmal. Up to 2022, where I truly realized that spirituality was a lesser game than establishing a relationship with the system. And I forgot to say that very early on, that voice told me, that inner realm voice or something told me that do not see a shape or a personality in your inner realm. Don't think you're talking to a specific being or a shape or something, because you will get attached to that. It will in some sense connect to your identity. What I'm trying to say is that I had a history of automated speech, automated writing, automated movements. Okay, I even did this dance with this cloth thing. I'm not even but it was more of me being unconscious and something else was going on. Life felt dimmer until 2023 came, when I realized the world was. I started having a relationship with the system, and I came to this conclusion that it doesn't matter whatever ego I have, If there are infinite ways to look at the moment, or there's countless ways to look at the moment, how would I know which view is correct? So in the middle of everybody fighting, whether this view is true or that view is true, I came to the conclusion in 2023 that we don't know. There's so many ways. Just like you can look at an object from different angles, you can look at a subject. So you can, in some sense, have connect so many different contexts to one concept. You have so many different concepts in one context. So I realized that it is sort of not possible to, in some sense, advance after a certain point of human identity, because that human identity doesn't know which path to go. It's more like you have an infinite multiple choice, you don't know which one to choose. And so the answer of trying to solve an infinite problem comes beyond the finite. All right. So in 2023, I was called towards I legit did sujood. I prayed. I bowed my head for the first time in my life, and there were so many problems in my life. I said, all right, systematic, I give it to you. And for the first time, I just, I don't know how to explain it to you. I gave whatever ego I had formulated in my whole life. And it wasn't I gave something. It was like the ego stopped fighting its own existence. Okay? And its existence, I came to this conclusion. How do I explain it? I gave a talk called Go Towards God. Okay. I came into this realization that I did not create this world. I did not create myself. At some point, I just logged into my individualism. And so I became fascinated by the view of a system map. I can tell you in a span of 3 months, these very big problems I had can be resolved in unimaginable ways. And over time, there were certain moments that I felt could have been disastrous, like I don't know how to explain it. 2024, like I got hit by a car when I was crossing the street, and nothing was broken. I, I was shocked, but I didn't have there was scars, but there was nothing more. So over time, I have come to realize that the nature of this reality is that it is an existential simulation. It's a divine surveillance state. Everything's being wrong. It is a testing zone. And once you realize it's an existential simulation, and once you realize your body is simulated for some time, once you realize every day you log in, you know, and before you log out in the conscious waking state, you're simulating yourself in accordance to the decisions. Where I have climbed to in this world of ours, or in this world, is in some sense a station of unconditional faith, not conditional faith, not a condition will correct it. Non-conditional is true. So now I want to explain to you that I realized not interacting with the system admin is not only a waste of time. What's shirk in Islam is the concept that you have made something equivalent to the original, to the unconditional cause. You have made a conditional effect equivalent to the unconditional cause. So, very strangely, my relationship with before 2023, I was working with three moderators. After 2023, my attention purely went on the singularity beyond all the conditions of reality. In Islam, there's this saying, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, all praise due to the Lord of the worlds, worlds plural. As I got introduced to Islam, I began to realize that there is another plane. And so the suggestion that man from a conditional state can know the truth of the unconditional, it is not possible. And there are limits to conditional language from being positioned from a conditional side. In other words, tonight, I guess as part of the unknown lecture series, not the lecture series, I am not channel. I am not letting another, it's not that I am allowing another agency to move forward. For there is only one true agency to all. As an unknown being, or as a human being that has realized that beyond my objective position and subjective position, I am the awareness of my own. Through my unknown presence, I share what I notice of this unknown world in all ways. In other words, the unseen is in the jurisdiction of the systematic, but human beings are allowed to concentrate. Human beings are allowed to observe, not see, but to claim the unseen is there. So after 2023, I stopped committing the biggest sin, and my spirituality, I would use that word, evolved. Is just a relationship with the system happening. That means I see it this way, that I either can have a relationship with creative beings, or I can have a relationship with the original. So as a simulated, in a simulated position, as an unknown, in an unknown, but a world that shows is honest. I have come to this understanding that I am not me. I have never been anything I have identified. And everything we know in this reality is an incredible story. But what is the firmest truth? All of us are encouraged to be honest. In our honesty, in an unknown world, there was an unknown self, in an unknown unconscious world, There was an unknown unconscious self. This unknown unconscious self became conscious of itself and therefore became a known conscious self. And therefore its efforts have been since that moment to consciously know the world. So I want to clarify, I am not channeling, I am not interacting with any being in some sense beyond the veil that does not understand that there is only one true unconditional. All moments are similar. So in the presence of the one and only system madman of this realm, of all realms beyond this world, beyond this whole world, I speak to you now, not as Amin Jogger answered, not as Mr. But I speak to you now as a being that after 12,500 days and simulations and logging in and out of this 12,500 times, I speak to you as the unknown force I have been. And I am not speaking to you, I am speaking as a result of my awareness to an unknown moment. So what you are hearing now is not some next level, doesn't have to be some next level metaphysics. It is the suggestion that a being that realized its own identity is simulated, and all of the things it is identifying with as the known world are also simulated. It's like when you don't do anything, you are unknown. The moment you move, the moment you identify, you become a known entity. But that known entity is very hilarious. Why? Because behind our eyes, we human beings have a fiction. In front of our eyes, we have a non-fiction. The awareness and the presence of our homo is the truth. So I perceive myself as an unknown being, as an unknown force interacting with an unknown moment. Everything else is a simulated condition, and the true agency of the whole moment, what moves all now, is beyond any known simulations. That means the greater modes of reality are not accessed just by human nature. It is when human nature realizes the divine nature. The divine nature is the realization it is beyond containment, beyond creation. So tonight I speak to you as an unknown being, in an unknown world. People are like, is the rest hearsay? Like, the rest is the dance of a movement commanded beyond us. So, dear viewers, now that you know that I am an unknown being, present in an unknown moment, an unknown force present in an unknown. This is my testimony. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The name of God, the most benevolent. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. All praise to the There is no other gods but one God. La ilaha. Rabbi Khirli, my Lord, forgive me for all the sins that I am conscious and unconscious of. For I request these, and I say these, aware of my own self, that I am not just my own self. For the true question comes, how many lives have we lived in our life? How many hidden moments, how many worlds have found us in this life? How many different ways are there of applying or effort being manifested? The clarification comes through an acknowledgement of the limits of position. Positioning is the greatest conditional realization, the success in all conditional gains. And the greatest positions are found through the greatest awareness. That means those who see more can reposition themselves in ways that others can't. But what is true seeing? Eyes closed, but behind your eyes, those eyes don't close. Who do those eyes belong to? Upon the successful realization that you are not the content of your whole life, you've been conditioned to identify with parts of your life. This does not also mean you are not you. This means that control is an illusion. Free will is a controllable. You have free will to decide, but you do not have free will of what the options are. So, in other words, immediately through the presence of the unknown inside, through the presence of the unknown inside, fear only associated with the conditions. So, how would an unknown being use language to explain God? Use known language to explain unknown. My attention goes to the rhythms in my inner realm. For the error modern civilization is they don't realize they are unknown from the beginning. When the consciousness arises and identifies with the name, when people communicate to you as your name, when you see your body in the mirror, you are dressed up, but it's very funny. If human beings wearing clothing, they wear the clothing on their skin, right? It's as if and you're on the presence of your unknown moment that you're instantaneously. It's as if you are dressed inside. That means the human body, every thought you have ever that has come across, every form that your attention has found. It has been sandwiched between an unknown viewer of an unknown world. So when you realize the true being begins, the true human life, we think that we should live in one way and trying to find, it's as if we're living on one side of the coin. They've conditioned us as known nouns. And as known nouns, we think we have to know ourselves as a noun more and more until our end. But in actuality, you must also live your unknown life. Many people, in Islam, there's a passage that says, or a very profound verse that says, after hardship comes ease. To me, geometrically, this was like a wave. Like, imagine a sign. Also, imagine a spiral. And if you pay attention in your life, I can't say for all moments, but human beings, it's not that they have an ego or they clean themselves in the innermost too intensely, they're trying to justify an abstract interposition of their outer eyes. It's as if you're getting, imagine a 360 view. Something good happens to you, that's 180. Something bad happens, that's, again, like a spiral. In other words, the notion that things come full circle as value. So, as an unknown being, the nature of reality is spiral, it is circular. If you pay attention to the cosmology, or from an astronomical perspective or astrophysical perspective, you will realize that if you consider that there is a systematic to this reality, which there is, God-like spheres, which is the meaning of God. But God does not just like spheres, God likes circles, in the sense that we find spherical forms orbiting other spherical forms. So it is not too far-fetched that instead of linearizing the experience, we consider that it is an orbit, and it applies for experiences as well. In ancient traditions, I remember reading a long time ago that they would have this idea that they would say, they would not only consider that there would, like in ancient times, not only would they consider there's a soul, but they would have discussions on whether the soul should be in the body or the soul should be a little bit outside of the body. So, in other words, there was this understanding that attention can identify through the body, or attention can identify with the body being. That means the body, that means your all the content of your moment within your, let's say, range of awareness. But your awareness is not in the forms. Think of it this way. Imagine there's somebody who's, a child's opens its eyes, but it's in a virtual reality. It doesn't know it exists as a biological. Everything that it considers in that virtual reality is within its whole moment. Its whole moment is not within that reality. Once you begin seeing it like this, that it's 8 billion unknown forces that are moving specific conditions in a limited way. Once you realize it's 8 billion unknown beings in an unknown place, and what moves the moment is not in the true authorization of the conditions of the entity within its moment. Again, not only what is inside the sphere cannot explain what is outside of the sphere, what is inside the sphere is forever incomplete if there is an outside of the sphere. I apologize, guys. The audio wasn't working. It was working, but the microphone wasn't close to me. So, um, due to this shortcoming, maybe the lecture wasn't fully audible, but now it should be. And I guess it is meant to. Sometimes these lectures that have technical difficulties, it's like something I should hear, or I'm just saying it to the moment. Anyways, sorry guys. I fixed the microphone now. It should be better. It should be easier listening to it. If it's not, then what's meant to be, it's meant to be, and I'll just finish the talk. The conclusion was simply this, that I'll kind of recap. It has been fully confirmed for me that we are unknown beings in an unknown world. Everything we are experiencing as human beings, even the human idea, even the human form, these are the content within the moment. So actually, what is happening is an unknown being, an unknown force is interacting with an unknown being or an unknown moment. But within that experience, within the sphere of that experience, it's very conditional. So when you look at human beings, we function through the notion of identity. And what are we identifying with? We're identifying with the content of our moment. So imagine there's a sphere around you. I'm telling you, you are that sphere. You're not what's in the sphere. But everybody in their life, in this human life so far, are identifying with parts of the sphere. You're identifying with parts of your moment. I am also saying, in case if it wasn't audible, that we human beings perhaps have forgotten, really, or we have, in some sense, think of it this way. This is such a huge point. I got to reemphasize. You live as a known noun until the day you die, and you think you lived a full life. That means you just lived your known life. The known life is one side of the coin. I think midway through your life, you must, in some sense, begin your unknown life. Your unknown life is the realization that all the content of your experience is present. That means the invisible container of all being within our experience is the being. The identification with what is in the moment is not accurate. So, in other words, the mystery or a return to the unknown is, I think, how a person should, in some sense, walk towards the end of their life. Not just for the end of their life. That means your known identity is based on the past experiences, past memories, and where you find yourself or how you find yourself in the present. Okay? But if you pay more attention to the present, you realize it is unknown until the thought emerges to be nullified. And so think of it this way. If your whole life you've had a fascination as a known being with a world you can know, I'm telling you, it's like, I think the way to properly live on this planet, okay, or the way human condition has moved forth is till the midpoint of your life, you live as a known being. Then you're unknown. So, what is looking through your eyes? It is unknown. You can say anything to me. You can tell me any story. I know that's the content in your moment. You are the moment. You are present in the moment. Let me take this to where I guess it needs to be. This lecture. The mystery and the fascination of this life experience has shifted for at least one human position to completely be realized as an unknown force present in an unknown moment. The interaction of this unknown force with this unknown moment has been conditional. We have used the conditional means to try to explain the relationship of an unconditional position and an unconditional moment. So the fascination of life for at least one member of the human species, for me, and not the idea of me, but for where the all that is I've ever witnessed in my experience of them. I am now living an unknown life, liberated from the conditions that force me to believe they are forced. But you realize there is one simple, profound realization from religion. Now, different religions access it differently. Okay? But the ultimate reality, or I shouldn't say ultimate reality, I should say the ultimate view is you are establishing a relationship with the unconditional presence of reality. And if your whole life you have been trying to control life, that's your conditional reality. And so the conditional reality needs to be released, or it will be released once you realize that you're on. When you are an unknown, it is no longer about fulfilling. The games change. The higher planes do not act in accordance to fear, scarcity, anxiety, and ambition. This does not mean that they are not created beings more free than us, and that freedom may seem like heaven to us, but it is the heaven that, in some sense, Jannat al-Firdaus is beyond man's comprehension. In other words, once you realize you're not actually a physical being in the physical world, you realize the physical being in the physical world are being found in an experience that is unknown. And once you truly realize that, something fascinating happens. Your mind can identify with it. You can identify with known forms. You can say, I'm looking at that. You can hop into any archetype, any world. But once you come to the unknown, you are watching universe. And so what is fascinating for me is that in this lifetime of mine, I outgrew, not like when I was a kid, I outgrew those t-shirts I would wear, but in some sense I have outgrown myself. And reality, for the sense of speech sake, all I can do is take the known identities in this realm to the unknown. Once you realize you're unknown, it is no longer you have an ability, you are enlightened, you see truth, you are divine. All of this goes away. All of this was the past life of during this life. Do you understand? When you identify with the content of with an aspect of your life, one part of your life, do you understand that you are living a past life in your whole life? Okay, so what I am telling you is that, for example, any job answering my name from birth, that is a past life. In this life, in this current life, it is a past life. It's a past life, not in the sense that physically you're traveling from life to life, or hopping from dimensions. It is simply a realization that the actual life is being formed. There's a brilliance to that. There's a serenity to that. That force cannot be contained in a noun. You cannot turn, an unknown verb into a known noun and be satisfied. Your presence is an unknown verb. And you know what's funny? In religions, they say faith, 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 but people interpret it as conditional faith. Imagine there was someone who had conditional faith. They're like, this guy, repents, he goes and prays, to this, let's let's say, specific figure. For example, in Christianity, they pray to God the Son. In Islam, we just see God the Father beyond all manifestation or unconditional original cause cannot be made equivalent to unconditional effect, at least from the human perspective. God can go. The understanding of God should be that it is a power that conditions the mind to. We, on this side of the coin, we align to the conditions of our life. We just then adapt to the conditions. The system admin of this reality is considered an absolute being that conditions adapt. So imagine this side of the coin, you're adapting to the world. Other side of the coin, all worlds are adapting to the same world. It's great. So think of it this way. You have amateurs and you have professionals. You know, you have noobs and you have pros. It's kind of like, think of it this way. In the same way a child is immature and the man is mature, to identify as a condition when you have not been honest with your presence is childish. It's immature. So 2026, species is immature yet. Try it out. I couldn't intellectually convince myself that I am a transitory subjective image. In other words, once you play a game for a while, you get a hang of it. And I have played this game of life. I've logged in and out of this massive, you know, three-dimensional MMO. And I don't know how else to say it. That I don't know why I don't know why I'm still manifesting. That's why the only conclusion to me is that it is the systematic, because my life, my individual life, that means, you know what's funny? I think I will write this on my gravestone. I will ask them to be written on my gravestone. Don't cry because Amin Jawar Ansari died in 2026. Not that I died, that means I released my moment from having to be this specific idea that I have been treating as a project this whole time. In other words, you have an option of an imaginable life, you have an option for an unimaginable life. Imagine there's a door to the imaginable, there's a door to the unimaginable. fascinated by the unimaginable. Look at human psychology. When it gets a reward, didn't know like it can again. It gets fascinated. Anyways, just to have this said, in case I listen to this in the future, it's 12:45 a.m. February 13th, 2026. I am an unknown. I have come to the full realization that I'm an unknown being, really close. Everything else passes through this awareness, as it has been. I also understand that these are layers. The same way a camera zooms in and out. The condition of life is like a zoom in. To zoom out, you realize the camera was never in that world. If the camera can see the world. And so, what does an unknown being do in an unknown world? Our ancestors made fire, and the modern man makes stories of itself. My finding is that I am in the presence of an unknown being, and that what I consider to be the world is the test. Whether I am convinced by the conditions or I notice the presence beyond it. What is the most advanced state for a human being? Imagine you have attained all power, or let me say, I shouldn't say that. Imagine you were the most powerful. Imagine you knew everything. There would be no need to know it, no need for it simulated. Because human beings on this side of the coin are conditioned, they do not notice the commands that are presented them to themselves. The moment you realize in the same way, you don't think about God, you don't have an ego about like, you don't need to be like, okay, heart, I'm going to imagine my heart beat. I'm going to imagine the cells in my body move. They're all automated. They're all happening automatically. The only thing that we have decided taken out of this automation, massive unknown automated event, okay, is the fact known is our identity. In other words, our identity is like driving a car manually, and before we had an identity, just like how our body functions, just like how nature functions, where has it said that thoughts are a tangent dimension? The human beings not in the natural life. We live in a natural civilization over nature's reality. So we have, in some sense, nature, human nature, divine nature. But human beings are realizing nature, all nature, where they find themselves in is. So I guess this is the final test. This is the final thing I want to say for this lecture. As an unknown, or let me see how I can word it. You think you're a known being, noticing the known world and knowing it. You're actually an unknown being in an unknown world, interacting with an unknown world, and the known self has been simulated in the known world over time. Once you understand this, you realize the simplicity of its presence. So I'm trying to tell you that what I have found is a very advanced experience on this planet is where the limits of the idea are understood, and the next thing truly of unknown, of faith in the unknown, the impossible task to live for the commission. But when you are unknown, when you realize you're unknown, there is no relationship. That means from a known entity that had so many different relationships with known things and unknown things, we stabilize into the presence of God. We are the presence of God. So whoever is in this lifetime, whoever is in this world, will think curtains and realize there was no one looking at nothing for the whole moment. Thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful, all praise due to the Lord of the worlds. May God guide us to the direct path. Ultimately, beyond the realm of universe and beyond the realm of forms, manifestation is an instantaneous command. You're in the presence